the background of this project. And just again, thank you so much for joining us. We're just really excited to see the contributors to this beautiful, beautiful collection. I like to show it because it's always good to get a visual of it. It's a beautiful, beautiful collection. And we're excited to finally be able to launch it and have the writers here and those that were involved in bringing it to life. So a little bit about the project itself. It was produced out of a workshop with Saseni, and this was at the Hargeisa International Book Fair in 2019. And as you all know, COVID happened, and there were quite a few issues with sort of trying to push things forward, particularly for Huza Press, which is particularly small, independent publishing business based in Kigali, and sort of being able to bring together the resources to bring this book to life just took a little bit longer. But we're happy that it's actually finally, here, and we can celebrate these amazing writers and this work. So Billy, who's here, run the workshop, and he worked with Nadifa Mohammed, and the book was also edited by Stacy Hard, who works for Saseni as the co-director, and Lucky Grace Isingizwe, who I've seen on the call here, and she did that from the Huza side. Billy, you are potentially going to lead this conversation, and it will be exciting to hear what went into bringing this book to life, and just how you worked with the different writers, and also just what was, at the sort of the inspiration behind bringing these wonderful writers together to produce this collection. I saw Jama on the call. So welcome, Jama. We just want to say thank you for having sort of been a part of bringing this book together. So Jama is the director of the Hargeisa International Book Fair. I wanted to check as well if we have Ahmed on the call. Ahmed, are you anywhere? I haven't checked to see, but if you're on the call, Ahmed, it's just also, just wanted to say a big shout out to you for having made the book available in Nairobi, and the books are in Kigali at the moment. So really, really exciting to have the books in the hands of the authors themselves, but also a lot of others who have already purchased copies of the book. But just wanted to say thank you so much for joining us, and welcome. And I'll hand over to Billy to sort of dive into the project itself and the book, and then he'll invite the writers as well to engage. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Louise. Hi, everyone. How's everyone doing? No, it's just so great to be here. It's been quite a while, and it's just amazing to see the faces we were with at the workshop. It was incredible looking back at the collection and seeing how well these stories have aged. They just seemed so fresh and new. So without much ado, we are going to kick off. And the plan is to hear from the list of writers who are in the anthology. And I'll just start with a question and then invite each writer in turn to respond to this question and then do a reading. So it would be really great if you guys could tell us about just the spark of your story in this anthology. Where did the idea come from? And if you can remember, how did it evolve through the process of working on it at the workshop? I'll invite Mona to start. Hi.
Hello. Hi, everybody. It's good to see everyone again after all these years. Thank you, Billy. It's a pleasure to be with you guys. And I also wanted to say thank you to Huza for organizing this launch event and for this lovely little reunion. So Just in terms of my story in the anthology, Seeds of Jannah is the name of the story. And like many of the stories I write, I think this one started with a throwaway question to, somebody in my life. And what would seem to be like a casual response really has layers and layers of story to it. And in this case, in this story, Seeds of Jannah, it's about my mother. And the question was to my mother about her childhood. And as a result, I think we just got to the heart of a topic that was a sore spot for her. So, this denied opportunity for an education when she was growing up. And I think she sees it as her Achilles heel. And the story is set in the 50s in Hargeisa, at a time when education, particularly for girls, was introduced and encouraged in Somaliland. So, um, my mother's parents were farmers and they depended on their children to keep their farm going. So, the story really explores this. Sorry, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, good. So the story sort of explores these competing worlds and the two generations, obviously with the backdrop of you know the landscape, Somaliland, climate insecurity, all of that. So I guess if I was to say what sparked the story, I would probably say the storyteller. So
Yeah.
yeah.
Great. Please share with us, just do a reading so we can actually, so that everyone here can kind of hear, to add on to what you just said.
Sure, of course. Sorry, I'll just bring up the reading. Okay, so I don't think I really need to set this one up. I'd like to think that through the passage and the imagery that a scene will come up for everyone. So I'll start the reading. I saw myself with Amina at the souk many months before. We were standing some distance from my mother's stall, waiting for her to close. The fruit vendors had suddenly become discreet, their desperate hands quietly and skillfully counting tired old shillings. Around them, banter from passers-by kept the crowd entertained. Waria, said one. When do you think these useless Stradberele will have a guava for our sharab? Agreed another. All they ever bring are these dried up watermelons and sour old pomegranate. At this, a heavy-set woman selling spice shah and sambusa released a loud, scratchy cackle through the market. She twisted her face and adjusted her voice to mimic the fruit farmers a few strides away. They're the seeds of paradise, she mocked them. Don't let one fall. The crowd joined in, yelling one after the other. Don't let one fall. Their collective laughter seemed menacing. The fruit sellers, including my mother, ignored them, her resentment visible only by the vein that protruded in the middle of her forehead. In the distance, a radio roared for a group of men sitting in a tent, their cheeks bulging with the evergreen leaves that kept them intoxicated and forgetful. The announcer's voice was just as heady and sublime as he took his audience on a historical journey, rich in deaths and rebirths again. With authority, he spoke of times when prisoners were shackled in gold and children lived to be 120. Times when we, he said, were the tallest and most handsome of all people, fooling the Romans and cheating the Indians, only to be invaded by the new moon and its four-pointed star. All that is treasured, he said, cannot be embalmed.
Thank you so much, Mona. Thanks a lot. Alexis, please tell us about where your story came from.
Yes, happy to. Thank you, Billy. I was really excited for the workshop because I had the worst writer's block at the time. I couldn't write a sentence to save my life at the time. So, frankly, this work was actually really desperation. I was just like, I really want to put something down. And then being around other people, hearing their voices, learning from the group, it felt really wonderful. And I kind of felt, I think, loose enough to write again. The challenge at the time is that I grew up in Kisumu and I really wanted like I hadn't yet like met that many stories or poems talking about what it felt to grow up at that time in Kisumu. So my intention was just to write a Kisumu story, whatever that could mean. And then in the end, the Lake Victoria didn't actually end up featuring in the story, but I was quite happy about the outcome, and I had fun meeting the characters. So that's where it started. And then yeah, and the title of the story is called Dandelions.
Great title.
Shall I read?
Yes, please.
Okay, sweet. The story is essentially about two characters, and I'll read a little bit from each, and then you can hear how they sound. And this is page 118 if you have print copy, the version we have inside. If Sister Susan came afterwards to ask me to repent, I had to tell her the truth. Penitence was for the guilty. I was not a sinner. I was in love, which made me the best storyteller, perhaps the only kind. When she asked, I would say, it all began on the first day of term. What a wonderful day to be alive and in class 5 blue that was. Now, I don't want to spook her. Making a new friend is like luring a chicken. You must be strategic. You must think like the chicken, understand what it likes, what frightens it. The only sudden move you can make is the very last one when you pounce. It must be quick, precise. For the first 2 days, I only smiled at her when I walked into class for morning prep. Then on the third day, I made a small paper boat and I wrote, BMW means Baba, Mama, na watoto. Ha, ha, ha. I worried that was one too many ha's, but I dropped it on her desk before running out for PE. The time between that toss and her response was the longest in my life. I should not have been anxious. I am an expert chicken catcher. By the end of the first month, I had told her that my best friend, my grandmother, died. She told me Maasai watchmen speared her dog when it bit their neighbor and that she missed her home in Nakuru. We knew each other's tragedies. We would be friends forever. I like that she can never let her silence alone. I like that she leans into conversations and listens with her mouth slightly open, as if her ears aren't wide enough to capture the nuance in whatever you're saying. Her hands shake when she's especially passionate, and English flees so that raw Kiswahili only Jalus have oozes through her teeth to worry the thoughts loose. She always seems coiled up too tightly, like she's holding an unbearably hot potato in her mouth, bouncing from foot to foot, wringing her hands, those slender things, and nowhere to place the impossible tuber. Now, for such a chatty little one, the best thing about Jenny is that there are so many thoughts of hers one is not privy to, possibly because she has very few, but nonetheless, charming quality, that opacity. I notice she's become even scrawnier than when she first joined St. Mary's. Sometimes a hungry look claws out of her eyes like a rat underwater. Still, a forgivable flaw, with the light skin and that fervor only callow girls can sustain. How convenient to be able to look up across this class, disappointing lot this round, and see her reflecting the day's different suns back at me, ever earnest. I expect we'll be good friends, Jenny and I.
Thanks so much. Thanks so much, Alexis. Yeah. I'll move on to Gary. And Gary, if you could just tell us what you think the origins of your story are and how you think it evolved throughout the workshop, that would be excellent. And then you could give us a short reading.
Yeah, sure. Thank you, Billy. I was just gonna type to tell Alexis that that was a wonderful story, and I can't wait to read it. I haven't had my copy yet, but hopefully I'll get it soon. Anyway, it's been such a long time that honestly, I would be lying if I told you that this story was inspired because I saw this thing or because I read this thing. I honestly don't remember. But I do know that in all of my writings, actually all the African books that I've always read, I've always been frustrated by the fact that most of them or a lot of them seem to be literary, right? I didn't really read that much things like suspense, things like historical, those kind of stories, right? So, and it always made me feel somewhat lost because my writing usually goes around those routes. So I was actually surprised that I was even part of the workshop because I was like, they're probably going to choose people that read these kind of stories. So anyway, coming into the workshop, I wanted to write a story that was, that was just interesting. And I know interesting differs from person to person, but for me, it means a story that that's gonna have some suspense in it. That's gonna be fun for someone who is reading it, and it's gonna be tense in a way. Like if you're reading it, you're scared in a way. You wanna know what happens next. Also coming into the workshop, I knew that my background with setting my story in an African context was really I don't want to say bad, but it was non-existent. So I wanted to learn from other writers because I was very sure that their stories are going to be set in an African setting. So I wanted to see how do they do it? How do they approach it? How do they, look at it? So that I could try and mirror some of it and start to learn to tell stories that are rooted in African cultures as well. So in the end, I ended up with this story that reading it again after all these years makes me somewhat cringe in a way. But I'm gonna read a short paragraph anyway. I'm gonna start on page, I think it's 102. I don't have a book, I have only a PDF, so I'm not sure if this is right, but it's on page 102 in the PDF.
Gary,
And
when you said you can't say where this came from, whether it was something you saw, I would have been very worried if this is something you'd saw, you'd seen and you are telling. Anyway, go ahead to hear reading.
okay, awesome. Here we go. I didn't see Jackie again until later that evening. The restaurant was quickly filling up, and there was a new waitress, Sarah, who looked a couple of years older than me. She balanced several drinks on a tray and walked with such grace that I knew she had done this before. She's replacing you, a voice whispered in my ear. I flinched. I turned and Marco was grinning. This close, he reeked of beer and his teeth shined a faint yellow. There was tiredness etched in the lines across his face, and his pupils were enlarged. What? I took a step back. She's replacing you. Today is the day. You mean, yes, I could not concentrate. I kept looking at my watch. 40 minutes. Someone bumped into me and the bottles I was carrying crashed down. A voice nearby cussed me. A bare foot stepped onto the shards of glasses, started limping, and fell onto a table. A fight broke out and I left before I was entangled in the ensuing melee. 30 minutes. I took an order from a young couple who were staring around in amazement. The man reached across the table and grasped the woman's hands, pulled her forwards, and the two started kissing. 20 minutes. A man waved at me from a table in the shadows. 6 young girls sat with him, some whispering to each other, one flinching every time someone passed by them. We locked eyes and she averted hers. 10 minutes. I looked at the counter. Marco was wiping glasses and laughing at something a client was saying. 5 minutes. I stood at the counter, shaking. I remember Jackie that morning, the way her eyes had lingered on me as she pursed her lips. Are you ready? I jumped. He was pressing onto me from behind, not moving. I felt his hands on my hips. I pushed back against his crotch and he grinded into me. And I'm gonna stop there. I chose this paragraph because when we were doing, this short piece because when we were doing the editing, this was one part where I think it was Kate who said that she liked the 30 minutes, 40 minutes, 10 minutes kind of thing. And I also came to love it as well. So here you go. I hope you get to the story and I hope you get to enjoy it.
Thank you so much, Gary. Thanks. Much appreciated. We'll now switch to Hamdi Ali. And for me, what's really amazing about this anthology is just the variety, and just having, I think, a little bit of everything in every story. And you'll see this, I think, from Hamdi's reading. But Hamdi, hi, how are you?
I
I
think
think you're
I'm
muted.
muted.
Are you good?
I was okay for a while. I didn't see I was muted. Hello, everybody. It's good to see you all again. And hi, Dr. Chama. I see my old boss here. It's Mubarak.
So
Um,
if you could
yeah,
just tell us where the story came from and then give us a reading, that would be excellent.
yeah. Okay. So this the story is basically from um, community beliefs. A lot of memory because when I was younger, I used to we did move quite. So I remember everywhere we go, I remember like hearing something or how community communicates what's happening here, what had happened here. So part of the story is from a house we used to live in when we were younger, and what I remember from there, how when we moved there, the stories like what grown-ups used to tell us, from the community beliefs and how community communicates from one place to another. Anyway, so I remember working on this story with I remember Nadefa commenting and actually telling me this is you have good what can I say when something happens and then you are retelling it and then that actually kind of um encouraged me to put this together, all of it. So this is like a one main character called Asli. So Asli's life when she was younger, what happened to her, something's happening when she's older now, and how these two are connected. How the things that happened to us when we were younger kind of influence us from when we are older, and later in life how they affect us mentally and everywhere in life basically. So I want to read something I picked from the story. So this is what it says. It goes, um, I think I hit a stone. Please slow down. I'm not wearing any shoes. It's very dark here. I can't see in front of me. Ashley stumbles along. She's aware of the openness of the place. It feels like she's in outdoors. The ground is stony. She recognizes what feels like steps, but these steps in an open door space. So, welcome to our space, Ashley. After you take a look around, we will meet with our chief. Her sight returns, as if a blindfold has been lifted off of her eyes. They are at the half-open door through which you can see a beautiful sky. The stars seem much closer to the ground. The moon is spectacular, huge. Ashley can make out the cries of animals coming from all the directions. An intense feeling of belonging fills her. Everything feels familiar, like coming back to the country of your grandparents after a long absence. Welcome to the land of your ancestors, Ashley. We are excited to meet with you in person. I am Chief Ahmad of the Esenkayed people. Ashley smiles and nods. By the way, the story is called The Children of Esenkayed. Uh, I remember Grace telling me, can we listen again and asking me more about why I picked this story, the name of the title of this story, and if we should, and I, if I could explain to you what SNKed means in English, I don't know in English, but SNKed is like something to my understanding. I could be wrong. Maybe Dr. Chama is here, so it could mean something else. Or if I would translate it, but SNKed to my poor and humble translation would be something that talks to you, but then in a positive way that tells you something, but then also kind of connects you to your future self, can I say, or to your higher self, and then gives you something positive. So I believe that so this story actually finishes in Let's Go. I mean, the story is finishing. The last scene of the story is happening in Let's Go, and I believe these people that used to live there were the SRKs, and then that we are also SRKs. We are part of SRK too. Yeah, I mean, this is how I would explain. And I perceive my captain. If someone is speaking, if someone has a question, they can ask me about
I
this
think,
story.
no, I
But
think I think
yeah,
I'm them because I think it was just somebody. Go on, go on.
yeah. So, anyway, I was saying, there's a lot happening in this story, and it has a lot to do with who I am as a someone from Somaliland, from Mexico, from where I grew up, cultural, where I work. I used to work at the cultural center, honestly, and I think that also inspired me a lot. To bring this out, and culturally, artistically, all of that things. And I'm very grateful for the opportunity. I just want to say thank you to Dr. Sharma and to the team and to the editors and to Huza Press and everyone. Thank you for bringing this into the world. And you guys, thank you so much again.
Thank you so much, Hamdi. Yeah, it was and thanks for reading and thanks for what you've just said there. Thanks. And we finally have Aisha Ali Haji who will read from Genie Boy.
Hi.
But first tell us your thoughts on the story and where you think it came from.
Yeah, of course, it's amazing to be here talking with you guys and, discussing this book. So for me, the story for Genie Boy, I've always been fascinated with the genie mythology. In my community, the Swahilis, we have a very rich genie culture and mythology. Since we were kids, we've been told, oh, don't walk here at night. You'll find a genie. Don't talk in the toilet. You'll be slapped by a genie. So it's always been something that's really fascinated me. This whole a whole entity, and these entities that exist in a parallel world to us, and as I grew up, it was very common to think, it was second nature. But then you come to other places, and it's, when you start talking about genies, people look at you weird, like, what are you talking about? What is this? So yeah. So I wanted to with this story, I wanted to explore this mythology and the concept that some people get access to this parallel world through, genies and maybe through dreams. So I wanted to build a story around it. What if somebody can be able to access this parallel world through their dreams? So this is where the story came from. And then the other aspect of it is also I'm very interested in accessing historical memory through family and cultural practices. So I wanted also to bring that into my story and just explore that version of, the characters are Swahili, they come from Mombasa in Kenya, which is, a historical Swahili region with a long, long, rich history of centuries. So I research a lot and read a lot about this region because for me it's like accessing my ancestral knowledge and memory through what happened and what we still do up to now. So this is what I wanted to bring out in this story, and I'm very interested in speculative fiction, the story of the supernatural. I read a lot about this, and it's very African. So many African communities have this. Stories. So I'm interested in bringing that into my fiction, and that's actually what I'm focusing on at the moment. And coming into this workshop for me, it really helped me to be able to develop this story. I had the idea, the title, especially Genie Boy, a boy who's possessed kind of by a genie, but I didn't know where I can take this story or bring this story. So with this workshop, I was able to walk through this spark and build a story around it and create a place where the story exists, develop the characters, the narrative, and being able to talk with all these other writers about our stories. The more you talk about writing, the more you are inspired to write. I believe that having a community of writers that you can actually talk about the process of writing, the how to do it, the writer's blocks and all that, it really helped me to develop this story. So it was a great experience for me. And I'm so grateful I was able to go there and also experience Hargeisa and the Hargeisa International Book Fair, having access to all these other African writers who attended the fair and listening to them. And as a writer, that was one of a lifetime experience, and I hope I'll be able to return again. Dr. Musse, thank you so much for allowing us to do that, and hopefully we'll see you again in future fairs. So that's where the story came from and where I built this spark from. So I will read from the story. For those who are following this, page 17, just the beginning of the story. Hashil squinted as he walked into the front room of the house, adjusting his eyes to see through the smoke. Smoke so thick it dimmed the light coming through the slightly open wooden windows. Peering through the haze, he could make out the outline of his grandmother bent over the source of the scented smoke. She was a small woman and seemed even smaller in this position. She was sitting on cushions placed on an old carpet, and he could hear her softly chanting prayers, her hands occasionally picking pieces of the ubani, a mix of small fragrant crystal stones and bits of bark that had been distilled in fragrant oil. She dropped this into a small clay urn filled with charcoal that glowed red in the dim room. The crystals sizzled as they burnt inside the chetezo and released the smoke that came out of the small windows carved out of the top of the urn. Hashil removed his sandals and made his way across the carpeted room, his movements quiet, not to interrupt the sense of reverence that hung in the air along with the smoke. He lowered himself onto the cushions and sat beside his grandmother. He watched as she added more oud, then a mix of dried sage and other herbs, and he inhaled the sweet scents deeply, moved by her melodious voice. When she got to the end, he responded with several amins. He waited until the ceremony was completed before he broke the silence. Shikamo Bibi, he greeted. Marhaba mwanangu Hashil. How are you? How was your day? She responded. It was good, busy today. I'm a bit tired. Pole mwanangu. Drink that juice. It will make you feel better. She gestures to a tray on a stool beside him. He poured the drink as she picked up a Quran, then offered him one. He took a long draught before he opened the Quran and joined her for the next 2 hours of prayers, which ended with the last compulsory prayer of the day, Isha. Once a month, on a Thursday evening, Hashil came to his grandmother after the Maghrib prayer and joined her in this weekly ritual. She was his first spiritual teacher, and it was one of the many things that connected them. The close relationship started the day she had taken his father's place and sang the adhan in his ear. He was born 3 weeks earlier than expected, and his father had been at sea when Hashil's mother went into labor. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Aisha. Thank you so much, guys. 5 writers out of the 10 in the anthology. Unfortunately, Nabila Abdul Malik couldn't make it because of Wi-Fi issues, but you can read her story in that. You can read her story in the anthology. So I just want to invite Stacy Hardy, who worked with the writers after Nadifa and I finished with them in the workshop and helped them edit the story further. And just to say hello and say something about working on the stories with the writers and what that process was like.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Billy. And thank you to everyone who's read. It's wonderful to re-listen to the stories and also to hear them in your voices instead of just working on the page, which was very much my experience with that. I also just want to say an enormous thank you to all the writers for their generosity in the editing process. You know, I always think it's a dance in some ways, and if you can dance together well, it's beautiful. But you also have to find each other and feel each other. And everybody was so generous and wonderful to work with. So I deeply, deeply appreciate all the work the writers put into it in the editing process. I suppose I just want to say, I think that editing in this moment has become kind of an afterthought with many publishers, where editing is not really integrated in and books aren't properly edited. And I just think that there's such an enormous importance for it. So I really appreciate the care that this collection took, with also allowing for an editing process, which is really the time we work very closely on the page with language. All the writers will know with the back and forths, you know, we go down to a sentence level. And I think that work of craft, that work of editing is such an important part of the process. So I really, really value that a space like this is made. And I hope that all as writers, as we go forward, we always take this practice with us, that the story's not done until you've edited. And of course, the experience of working with an editor. And also what I learned, you know, I think one of the greatest gifts of being an editor is how much I learned from all the writers on this. And I do also want to quickly shout out to Lucky Grace, who is here as well. Who we worked with on a couple of projects, and who has always been just such an enormous pleasure to work with, such a wonderfully good energy. So yeah, I don't really have much to say except what a joyous, wonderful process, fantastic stories, and just an enormous thank you to the writers for their generosity and being prepared to dance with me across your pages.
Thank you so much, Stacy. So the workshop that led to the anthology was kindly hosted by the Hargeisa Book Festival, and we have director Jama Musse Jama. And Jama, I just wanted you to say hello, but also reflect on the role creative writing workshops play in your festival, and what you think this collection means in the context of the work you're doing.
Thank you so much, Billy. It's fascinating to see all the faces of people that I've never met, but I read, communicated by email. So it's really to be part of this conversation. You said, Billy, it's a while that we were discussing on this issue. These issues related about the creativity and how, let me say, the work that CSNE or Huza Press, or in this case, Hargeisa International Book Fair, are doing is the kind of building what I call an enabling environment for the creativities. Because of, yes, the creativity is there, and we see tonight, we had, for those who read the anthology, or for those of us who worked with them, stayed with them and saw them working, see the creativity is there, but then there is something that was missing. And what I like of this anthology, but the work that was behind, or the way that we came through in this long process, is exactly what was missing. So let me first to say congratulations to the creatives, those who are connected, but those who are even missing out, not with us today. So it's really, really pleasure, and see that finally the product is there and in the world, and read and saw the world of what you had in mind and wanted to share with the world. So the case of this particular workshop is really happening in a period of pre-COVID, where the Hargeisa International Book Fair is becoming also quite mature, let me say, but there is a need to do the big step, and that's when Billy and Nadifa Mohammed and others joined in a parallel creative work and one academic conversation that was happening. Both of them produces something tangible that we finally have today as a book. So as a productive creative work that's around. So thanks really to Sesame, thanks to Huza Press for allowing this work to come, to the life, because that's what was missing. The creativity was there. We didn't create. The creativity was there. It was in your head. It was in you. You were born with. But this opportunity allowed us to, this work comes out to the world. And the second point that I want to touch is, apart from the people who were involved with, and I really thank you guys to people like Kate or people who really believed in this project post workshop. And here we have Lucy, Stacy, people who were working with, but most importantly, I really want to thank Huza Press to come up with this, pushing this work comes out. Because of, as I was saying, what was really missing is that we have a lot of creativists in the Global South. I remember Billy and I were talking since the day of Kawani back in Nairobi. There is a creativity there, but who reaches out, or how this creativity reach out to the world? The problem of the, our counterparts, the Western side of the globe, the fact that they don't have access to, they assume that it doesn't exist. And this is a really big mistake. So what this kind of work is doing is showing the case and showing them wrong. One of the books that is well, referred to that when we talk about East Africa and the history is Barton, First Footsteps in Africa. And you say, go to hell, because of before you there was other food stop. Say at least my first footsteps in this place of the world. So that denial existed in the creativity world until recently. Of course, now the technology changed. There is access. There is opportunity for young creatives and not only young creatives who can showcase and tell the world is wrong, because the creativity is there. So this is the product that I want to celebrate. The fact allowing that this creativity come and reach out to the rest of the world. I was so happy to see the work already last year in Hargeisa International Book Fair, but this year at the London Book Fair, I took some of copies for the colleagues, for the writers who are based here in Somaliland. So I took some copies with me. So I was so happy to see the product at the London Book Fair. So people touch and realize this is the work that these creatives that's it. So what I wanted to say that yes, the creativity existed. What was missing was the enabling environment that Huza Press and all those people who I mentioned it allowed. The chances, the possibility to showcase your creativity and tell to the world that is something to let know the world. It's like, in the court, if you don't have the hearing, you cannot make your case. You cannot defend yourself. You cannot prove wrong the others, or at least right in your case. So this was a kind of the hearing that you have been provided by this opportunity, this long process. And this is what made what I call it the enabling environment that make this work happen. So thank you so much for all those who have contributed. But most importantly, congratulations to the writers, to the creatives that we are sharing today. Their work in the world, available in every place. And I'm so happy to see Mona. I didn't see for a while. It's hard, so I know that she's on that side of the world, but I'm really so happy to see her face. And finally, congratulations to Hamdi Ali. Yes, you grow up within this environment, but congratulations, because of she had her baby girl just 3 days ago. So this is a congratulations. This is the news, and congratulations, Abdi. Love you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, Jama. I'll now open it up for the audience, and you could either ask a general question, or you can make a pointed question and say who you're asking the question to. So I'll just open this up. I hear that Mona wants to say something because she's got to take off. Mona, are you there? Yeah.
Mona,
Good.
Yes, sorry. Yes, it's past my bedtime. It's 12:20 a.m. So I'm
Oh.
gonna head off. But before I go, I just wanted to say thank you to Dr. Jama, to yourself, Billy, to Nadifa, Stacy, Kate, Grace, and everybody who was involved. For me, that process was really interesting and serendipitous. I mean, I know it's a few years ago now, but it was my first, I mean, I'd arrived in Hargeisa the week before, and I don't even remember how I heard about the workshop, but I emailed Dr. Chama and I said, if there is a spot in this workshop, I'd really love to join. And getting to do this workshop with the co-authors, and with yourself, Billy and Nadifa, getting all that feedback and your expertise, but also being challenged was really, really something that got me off as a writer. So I'm really grateful for the process, for the doors you guys have opened for all of us. I did a residency with Rhodes University shortly after the workshop through Dr. Chama and Dr. Linda Spencer. So, you know, and now I'm writing pretty much full time. So that would not have probably happened if it wasn't for that workshop. So thank you, everybody. And I will sign off. And I just want to say thanks again to all the authors and the creatives.
Cheers. Cheers, Mona. Take care.
Okay.
So, yeah, questions, comments, thoughts, reactions. Okay, while everyone's mulling, I have a question for the writers then. Yeah, it's been mentioned, and yeah, this took much longer than we anticipated for all sorts of different reasons. But I'm quite curious on what you're working on now and how you think this story fits in your wider trajectory as a writer. And if you could just mention any recent projects you've been working on, I think the audience wants to hear. I'm sure the audience wants to hear. And there's a quick comment to Aisha from Wairimo. Are you going to develop the story further? Maybe answer that question and then yeah.
A couple of people read my story were very upset with my ending. So I think that's why Warim was asking this question, because it just left the story hanging. And I would admit that I really struggled with ending this story. And I remember when we were editing, that was like, back and forth of me trying to figure out how to end the story. And I think one of my big struggles with writing is endings. So when I had no choice and it was like crunch time, you have to finish this, and now you have to, submit. You have to submit it for publishing. I think like Grace is smiling because she remembers the process. So I just had to like do something and leave it there. But when I finished, I was like, you know what? Sometimes you don't get the answers in a story, and that in itself is also an ending. So I don't think I will develop this story further, but inshallah, I will write other stories with the more defined endings in the future.
Upset is better than silence.
Yes.
That's a good thing. Yes.
Yes.
Okay, anyone want to respond to what I'd asked earlier? Now, what are you guys working on? And how is that, do you think, is that influenced at all with working on this? And do you see what you're working on as a part of a trajectory from this, which happened a few years ago?
I can go first. Billy, you said that this story took a long time to develop. I mean, these stories to finish. But personally, for me, it couldn't have come at a better time. I moved to Nairobi at the start of this year in January. And one of the reasons was that also I could be around, a large community of writers and also get to start creating stories myself that are not just short stories or written, but also visual. So things like movies, things like, theater, stuff like that. I mean, when I was writing this story, I wanted to write a story that is set in an African culture, African voices, that just felt African in a way, because that's something that I really lacked when I was growing up. I was always reading like Western books, always writing Western stuff, setting my stories there. So yeah, this story is definitely, I mean, I love that it has come at this point, because I'm at that point where I was completely lost and I'm like, this is gonna be very hard, right? But it has reminded me that, it's possible, you've done this before, you can do it again. And you're gonna be able to tell those stories you always wanted to tell. So yeah, very happy that we got to release this story very late at this time.
Great. Thanks so much, Kari. Yeah.
I would also like to answer your question, Billy. I am currently in between different writing projects, but the effects, I guess, of this story, my story before the malice was beauty, before the malice began, there was beauty, is that all the stories that I've written since are measured against this one. So you see, writing this one was a long process. So we worked on it at the workshop, and then we took a long break, and then we did editing. That was also a bit of a long time. And so the story was perfected over time, so much that I feel like it's the best story I've ever written. So every time I write a new story, I just have to measure it against this one, against it all the time. Thank you.
Thanks.
Maybe I can answer also your question. For me, writing is always and will always be my first love, but I work in media and I've been exploring storytelling using different medias, digital storytelling, podcasting as a, platform for storytelling. Especially now, I feel like there is a lot more interest in hard-hitting, short-form type of content. I hate the word content, but yes, it's just about producing content, but there's no really storytelling. So for me, I would, as much as I would love to explore actual storytelling through this medium. So yes, use the new platforms, use the new, developing platforms, but then stick to the aspect that I learned and especially learned from this workshop about writing while telling stories in those platforms. And then another thing is this book was the first time I got published in a book. So it was quite emotional experience for me seeing my name there, but it also gave me a hunger. Like, you know what? I want to get published again. I want to be, to write again and get published again. And so I have been working on a debut novel for a while, but getting this published has given me that kind of motivation to give more energy into that novel and just try and finish it as soon as I can so that I can get it published and see my name out there again. Yeah.
Thanks so much, Aisha. Jama has a question. Yeah, Jama, go ahead, please.
I was for us the question exactly what Aisha was saying is should make really proud of Huza Press and anyone who was involved in this work. This is exactly what I was talking about when I was talking about the Napoli environment. Give an opportunity to someone who has the creativity inside, and then then like it blooms, and then from there flies, and there is no one stopping you. So congratulations, Aisha. Go ahead, and you are in the right direction. My question was, since the creativity was still there, but somehow Stacy was also mentioning the fact of go into the sentence level or paragraph level. I sense also the issue of the language. So my question was, if any one of you is writing there, if there is a mother tongue word different from English, if you are not English speaking as a mother tongue word, if there is anyone who is writing or before was writing or continue writing. I had Hamda Hamdi Ali struggling the word Irsankayet. I'm sure if she was writing in Somali, it would have been not that difficult to explain in English the word. So my question to all of those who are listening to me, the writers, if you are writing other than English in your creativity.
Thanks, Jama. Yeah.
Can answer, Jama, and also as a way to extend what I've been doing since. So, curiously, this is the last short fiction, like short story I ever wrote. Since that time. I think it was good to get it out and feel, because I think the pressure is always like you start the short story collection and then you write a novel. And then I made this and it was really good to do. And I realized, no, I like poems. So it's helpful for me to do. But then importantly, it also reminded me that I care about making books and working with artists. I enjoyed more talking to the other writers. So before, my friends and I used to run something called Encarry Review, that was online publishing. And then I just really was excited about print. So some friends and I continued the work in a publishing outfit called Down River Road. And that process was really fun. We ended up doing an exhibition. In that exhibition, I got to write in Kiswahili. And around this time, I also put out a book with other friends that does exactly that, mixes languages and invites people to do so. And then you come up against the usual problems of like the mechanics of like people want to say this is Kiswahili versus this is an English type of book. People want it to be one or the other, whereas at least in Nairobi and much of Kenya, people mix languages. So I was really curious about how you put that into print, that people flow into languages without their needs to try and put in brackets or a glossary. Like my first poetry book, at the back, we had a back and forth because I didn't want to write glossary because it would feel so I don't know what to say, sociological, and there's some word that comes to mind. And so even just to change the title, that I'm not trying to explain to you these words, these are for the people who already know those words. And so to make that a different extension. Anyway, all of that is to say that it's been quite fun to see more and more people writing deliberately across language. And then what that looks like for people, especially like for in my family, no one speaks Kiswahili Sanifu. So how does that appear in the text in a way? Like what are the types of Englishes that are available to us? Yeah, that's kind of been the process for me.
Thanks, Alexis. At first, I was worried that we'd killed your hunger for the short form, but I'm glad like you've kind of branched out to many things. I was like, yeah, thanks for that. Guys, anyone else writing in non-English or African languages based on Jama's question? Silence means Jama. Silence means they're either shy or no.
I'd say just one thing. It's not something I ever thought I would do, but it's something that I want to do. I want to translate my stories into Kinyarwanda so that they could reach different parts of the country where they do not read in English. So I haven't started doing it, but it's something that I'm thinking of doing.
Thanks so much, Lucky Grace. Yeah. So, are there any burning questions? Unfortunately, we've I think run out of time. So
I'm just Billy. Honestly, I'm just coming back to the issue of the language, African language. It's not just for the sake of the African language, but at least for the last 3 decades, where I'm or close to the creative, so I'm thinking or I'm writing, I always ask it which language I use when I'm dreaming, or the night and sleeping. And I couldn't have better answer than similar when I'm writing. And I'm sure if I write Somali and then translate, because of that's my thinking, I write Somali, I dream in Somali, I create in Somali, and then I translate. And maybe the book at the end comes in English, but I believe that I wrote that book in Somali, even if it never happened to come out in Somali language. So think about it.
yes.
In which language you are dreaming? Ask yourself that question.
Yes. And just to add what Alexis said, the question of in between languages in places like Nairobi where you're moving between, how do we create the convention so that we have a standard with which different audiences can kind of work with? because one of the challenges now kind of creating those conventions of whatever English of the place or whatever language you're coming, and the mix of these things. I think that's just as important. So you can buy this book. I think links have been put up on chat. Prestige in Nairobi, Ikirezi in Kigali, and African Books Collective outside of the continent. I just really want to say it's so great to see you guys. It's been a while after the workshop, and it's really fantastic seeing everyone. And what a great experience it was. I derived so much energy from that workshop. I learned as much. I learned as much myself, and that's why I continue doing this kind of thing, because it just gives me so much great energy. So it's not only about, I think, what do I share, but what you also share with me and what I learned from, like, I think, reading your stories. Yeah, so it's really fantastic. So I'll hand back to who, and I just want to thank everybody for showing up. We really appreciate the support of you guys coming to listen to these writers. This is not something I think we take for granted. And I'll hand back to Louise and Huza. But thank you very much. Yeah.
Thanks, Billy, and thank you again to all the writers. Dr. Jama, thank you again. It's amazing to see you. All these faces that, like Grace, I'm so happy to see you as well. Ahmed has joined as well. Just to say a huge thank you, Ahmed, for making these books available. We could not have done it without you. Thank you, thank you, thank you. And I think we're completely out of time now. So I will probably try and close this here. But again, in the chat, you will find where you can access the book. It's available in basically most of the places where the writers are, which is the most important thing. And then, of course, you can, outside of the continent, you can access it through African Books Collective, and it will be in other bookshops as well. But thank you, everyone, and I hope you have a pleasant rest of the day. Those who are going to bed, go to bed energized, and for us who are starting the day, we will start the day energized. Thank you. Take care. Bye.